Emma Harper moved through the dining room of the Magnolia Room like a shadow stitched to the light. The Charleston evening hummed outside, a symphony of cicadas and distant harbor bells. But inside, the air was thick with the clink of crystal glasses and the low murmur of old money. Emma's black flats, regulation issue for the upscale restaurant, were worn to a whisper, the solace so thin they barely shielded her feet from the polished oak floor. Each step sent a dull ache curling around her ankles, a quiet rope of pain that tightened with every tray she balanced. Her smile, though, was flawless practiced, steady, a shield as much as her crisp black apron. At 28, Emma had mastered the art of being invisible in plain sight. The Magnolia Room was Charleston's crown jewel, a place where coastal developers, estate heirs, and lawyers with 3 last names dined without glancing at the waitstaff. Emma wove between tables, her tray a silver extension of her arm, delivering plates of seared scallops and chilled viognier with a grace that belied the exhaustion in her bones. She hadn't replaced her shoes in months. The tip money every crumpled. 20 and rare 100 was already spoken for. Rent for the small apartment she shared with her sister Lily. Prescriptions that cost more than a week's groceries. The electric bill flashing red on the kitchen counter like a warning light. In 2025, Charleston's charm came with a price tag. Inflation had pushed rent up 12% in the last year alone. And the cost of Lily's lupus medication had spiked, a bitter reminder of America's healthcare crisis. Emma's life was a ledger, every dollar accounted for, every hour a transaction. She paused near table 8, adjusting a napkin folded on an empty chair, her breath catching as she glanced at the door. The reservation list was packed to night regulars, the kind who tipped generously but never looked you in the eye. Her manager, Ethan Brooks, leaned against the host stand, his tie perpetually too short, his voice a blade cutting through the ambient jazz. "Emma," he snapped, "you're on 11. VIP. Walked in unscheduled. Wants privacy." Ethan never asked. He directed. Emma nodded, biting the inside of her cheek, and made her way to the tucked-away corner beneath a portrait of the restaurant's founder, a stern man in a sepia suit. Table 11 was reserved for anniversaries, proposals, or politicians hiding from the press. Tonight, it held a single man in a charcoal blazer, his phone face down on the linen, one leg crossed with the ease of someone who owned the room without trying. He wasn't reading the menu. He was looking at her. Emma steadied herself, tucking a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Good evening," she said, voice honeyed but firm. "I'm Emma. May I bring you something to drink while you decide?" The man didn't glance at the wine list. His eyes, a sharp gray that seemed to see past a practiced smile, held hers with an intensity that wasn't predatory but curious, calculating. "You've been working since lunch," he said. It wasn't a question. Her hand froze on a tray, just for a heartbeat. "Yes, sir," she replied, shoulders tensing. "It's been a full shift." He tilted his head, studying her nod. Her pressed uniform or the faint shine of her drugstore lip gloss, but the weight behind her eyes, the creases etched deeper this past year, the armor of her smile. "What do you want?" he asked, voice low, precise, like a note struck in a silent room. "More than anything in the world." The question landed like a stone in still water. Emma blinked, caught off guard. Was this a joke? In this world of oyster towers and whispered orders, the question felt alien, almost absurd. She looked at him again, expecting a smirk, a hint of condescension. There was none, just stillness, his gaze steady, waiting. For a moment, her smile slipped, raw and unfiltered. "A day off," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "One full day where I don't have to pretend I'm okay. Where I can sleep until it feels like sleep, not just a pause." where I'm not counting every cent at every red light, wondering if I can stretch what's left to cover Lily's meds, the rent, the power bill. She stopped, her breath catching. She hadn't meant to say all that. The words had spilled out, unscripted, like a confession she didn't know she was carrying. The man didn't flinch. He nodded, slow and deliberate, as if she'd answered. Exactly as he'd hoped. "I'll have the pan-seared halibut," he said finally. "No wine. Just water." Emma didn't speak. She turned, heart thudding, wondering if she'd just shattered the last thread of professionalism she clung to. The rest of the night blurred orders taken, plates cleared, smiles forced. The man, Nathan Pierce, as the receipt later revealed, ate quietly, left a cash tip so generous it made her blink twice, and slipped out without a goodbye. That should have been the end of it. At 1:47 a.m., Emma unlocked the door to her apartment, the rain a soft whisper against the windowsill. The space was small, 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a couch that sagged in the middle, but it was home. Lily, 17 and fragile in a way that broke Emma's heart, slept on the couch, a book open on her chest, a faint line of medication bottles on the end table. Lupus had stolen her energy, her color, but not her quiet defiance. Emma set her bag down, careful not to wake her, and then she saw it. A black envelope, heavy matte, resting on the rug just inside the door. No stamp, no address, just her name in silver ink. Emma Harper. Her pulse quickened. She picked it up, the paper thick and expensive, not the kind of thing landlords or bill collectors used. She opened it slowly, half expecting a mistake. Inside was a single card, black and sleek, embossed with a logo she didn't recognize and a note. Asterisk access to the Pierce Foundation Relief Fund. For Emma Harper. Use as needed. Asterisk. No signature. No explanation. Her breath caught. "Mia," she whispered, tiptoeing to her roommate's door and tapping gently. "You awake?" A groggy "What?" came from the other side. "Can you come here?" Mia Carter, curly-haired and half asleep, appeared moments later, rubbing her eyes. "Is Lily okay?" Emma handed her the card without a word. Mia stared, then blinked. No way. Is this real?" Emma shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I think it's from the guy at table 11. Mia's eyes widened. Girl, table 11 was Nathan Pierce. Like Pierce Foundation Pierce. The energy and tech billionaire who owns half the city's grid. Emma sat slowly at the kitchen table, her mind racing. She'd served him, answered his strange question, but she hadn't told him her life story. Had she? "I just said I wanted a day off," she murmured. Mia set the card down like it might burn her. "Maybe he thought you deserved one." The card gleamed under the dim kitchen light, heavy with possibility, but also with something else, something Emma couldn't name yet. Like a key to a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Outside, the rain tapped a steady rhythm, like a clock counting down to something unknown. Emma's phone buzzed, a notification from X lighting up the screen. She glanced at it, then froze. A post from an anonymous account, tagged with hashtag Magnolia Room. Asterisk, waitress at upscale Charleston spot. Getting cozy with a VIP. Wonder what she's trading for those big tips. Her stomach twisted. The platform, always a churn of gossip and half-truths, had already started spinning her story. In 2025, nothing stayed quiet, for long, not in a city like Charleston, not in a world where every move was watched, judged, posted. Emma locked her phone, her hands trembling. Lily coughed softly in the next room, and Emma closed her eyes. If this was a gift, it wasn't just for her. If it was a trap, she was already stepping into it. The black card sat on Emma Harper's kitchen table, its silver embossed logo catching the faint glow of the overhead bulb like a dare. Outside, Charleston's early morning air was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made every breath feel borrowed. Emma hadn't slept well, her mind looping through the previous night, the man at table 11, Nathan Pierce, his strange question, the envelope that appeared like a ghost in her apartment. The card wasn't the credit card, Mia had explained after. A quick search on her phone. It was access to a relief fund, a private initiative tied to the Pierce Foundation, the kind of thing billionaires set up to ease their consciences or polish their names. But why her? Emma's fingers hovered over the card, not touching it, as if it might vanish or burn her. Lily stirred on the couch, her breathing soft but uneven, a reminder of why Emma couldn't just shove the card into her drawer and forget it. At 17, Lily's lupus was a constant shadow, its flares unpredictable, its treatments a financial black hole. In 2025, the cost of her biologics had surged 20% due to supply chain issues and pharmaceutical price hikes, a bitter pill in a country where healthcare debates still dominated headlines. Emma's tips from the Magnolia Room covered the basics, but the latest hospital bill sat unopened on the counter, a $3,200 debt she couldn't outrun. The card, or whatever it represented, felt like a lifeline, but lifelines could tangle you just as easily as they saved you. Mia wandered into the kitchen, her curly hair a wild halo, clutching a mug of instant coffee. "You're staring at that thing like it's going to confess," she said, sliding into a chair. "Have you even checked if it's real?" Emma shook her head. "I called the number on the note last night. It's legit. Some kind of discretionary fund for community support, but there's no paperwork, no terms, just my name." Mia raised an eyebrow. "And you trust a billionaire to just hand you a blank check?" "Girl, men like Nathan Pierce don't give without wanting something back." Emma's stomach twisted. Mia wasn't wrong. She'd served enough Charleston elites to know their generosity often came with strings, favors, loyalty, silence. But Nathan's question at the table, "What do you want?" had felt different, like he saw the crack she hid behind her smile. She pushed the card toward Mia. "What would you do?" Mia leaned back, her gaze flicking to Lily's sleeping form. "I'd test it. Somewhere small, safe. Like buy a coffee you'd never afford. See if it bites." Emma didn't decide right away. She went through her morning routine, checking Lily's medication log, packing a protein bar for her shift, ignoring the X notification buzzing on her phone. The anonymous post from last night had gained traction, now with 200 likes and a thread of comments. Asterisk, "Who's the waitress cozying up to the VIP?" Asterisk, "But she's not just serving drinks." The words stung, not because they were true, but because they were so easy to believe in a city where class lines were drawn in cobblestone. Social media in 2025 was a courtroom, and Emma was already on trial. By noon, she stood outside Palmetto Brew, a coffee shop on Queen Street she'd passed 1,000 times, but never entered. Its linen napkins and bow-tied baristas were for people with disposable income, not for someone whose budget was a tightrope. The card felt heavy in her pocket, cool against her fingers. She stepped inside, the air warm with cinnamon and espresso, and ordered without hesitation. 1 oat milk latte, 1 blueberry scone. $12.50, nearly 2 hours of tip wages. She slid the card into the reader, held her breath, and watched the screen flash approved. No questions, no red flags, just a crisp receipt and a smile from the barista. Emma took her order to a window seat, the latte's richness almost disorienting. It was good, too good, like something you drank without wondering if you should have skipped lunch instead. That night, she tested it again, this time for Lily. A heated mattress pad to ease her joint pain, organic groceries from a boutique market. The overdue power bill. Each transaction cleared instantly, no alerts, no limits. The relief was immediate, But so was the suspicion, a quiet storm building inside her. She didn't touch a dime for herself beyond that coffee, afraid of what it might mean to want more. On X, the whispers grew louder. A new post tagged #Magnolia Room. Asterisk saw her at Palmetto Brew with a $10 latte. Who's funding that? Asterisk Emma locked her phone, her hands trembling. The platform's algorithm thrived on gossip, and she was its latest prey. 3 days later, Nathan Pierce returned to the Magnolia Room. Emma didn't see him arrive. She was wiping down the espresso station when Ethan's voice cut through the kitchen noise. "Harper, table 11. He asked for you by name." Her heart stuttered. She approached slowly, her pulse loud in her ears, the dining room's candlelight casting long shadows across the linen. Nathan sat in the same spot. No tie this time, his charcoal shirt open at the collar, his expression unreadable. He wasn't looking at the menu. He was looking at her. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Welcome back." He smiled faintly. "Emma Harper." Her name in his mouth felt like a weight intimate, in a way she didn't expect. "I didn't order last time. I interrupted your rhythm. Let's correct that." She folded her hands behind her back. "You're welcome to order anything on the menu." His brow lifted, amused. "I've made a choice." She waited, pen ready. "I'd like to know what you've done with the fund." Her grip tightened on the notepad. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward, still calm. "You received a card? I have confirmation. I'm curious what you've used it for." Her throat went dry. "Is that part of the deal?" "There's no deal," he said, his voice even. "Just curiosity. Call it personal interest." Emma's jaw clenched. "I used it for my sister," she said flatly. "That's all." He nodded, satisfied, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "Good." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Emma asked, "Why did you give it to me?" Nathan leaned back, his fingers tracing the edge of his water glass. "Because you were honest. You didn't ask for money or power. You asked for rest. That's rarer than you think." She shook her head. "You don't know me." "Not yet," he said, and the ease of his words unsettled her, like he wasn't trying to charm her, just stating a fact. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I know. That's why I gave it to you." Before she could respond, he added, "I'll have the braised short rib. Water's fine." Emma scribbled the order, her hand unsteady, and turned away. The rest of the shift was a blur, plates delivered, glasses refilled, her smile a mask. But Nathan's presence lingered, a question she couldn't answer. At the end of the night, he left another generous tip in cash. No envelope this time, just a nod as he walked out. Emma stood by table 11, the empty chair staring back at her, and felt the weight of something shifting. Not just in her life, but in the eyes watching her dot in the locker room. Ethan approached, his expression tight. "People are talking, Harper. About you and Pierce. New coffee habits, new groceries. Be careful." She looked down at her hands. No manicure, no polish, just clean nails from a moment of care she'd allowed herself. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said. Ethan's voice lowered. "Doesn't matter. Perception's everything." Emma didn't respond. She didn't have the energy. But as she stepped into the Charleston night, the air sticky with salt and suspicion, she knew something had begun. The card was real. Nathan was real. But the cost? That was still a shadow. She couldn't see. The Charleston dawn broke in soft pinks over the harbor, but Emma Harper felt no warmth in it. She stood in her apartment's cramped kitchen, folding Lily's clothes into a small suitcase, socks rolled tight, sweaters stacked with care, medication, bottles tucked into zippered compartments. Lily, perched on the edge of the couch, watched her with a half smile, her headphones dangling around her neck like a talisman. At 17, Lily's lupus made her look younger, her pale cheeks and fragile frame belying the sharp wit Emma leaned on like oxygen. The Pierce Foundation Relief Fund had paid for Lily's enrollment in a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins, a lifeline Emma hadn't dared dream of. But lifelines, she'd learned, came with weight. "You're packing like I'm moving to Mars," Lily said, her voice light but hoarse. Emma glanced up, forcing a smile. "If I don't pack your scarf, you'll text me from Baltimore complaining about the cold." Lily grinned, but her eyes held something heavier. "You don't have to. Come, you know. The trial center's got nurses who call me darling, like I'm in a rom-com. I'll be fine." Emma paused, a t-shirt limp in her hands. "Why wouldn't I go?" Lily shrugged, her oversized hoodie swallowing her frame. "Because you've missed enough of your life for me." The words landed like a quiet bruise. Emma knelt beside the suitcase, her voice soft. "You're not a burden, Lily. You're the reason I get up every day." Lily's gaze flickered to the black card on the kitchen table, its silver logo glinting like an unanswered question. "And now you've got a chance to get up for yourself," she said. Emma didn't respond, but the words burrowed deep, stirring something she wasn't ready to name. At the Magnolia Room that evening, the air felt different, thicker, sharper, like the dining room was holding its breath. Emma tied her apron, her fingers moving on autopilot, but the whispers followed her. Two servers by the cutlery rack stopped talking as she passed, one glancing at her too quickly before looking away. The sous chef, usually chatty, offered only a curt nod. Even the hostess, who once shared memes during slow shifts, handed Emma the table assignments in silence. On X, the rumors had metastasized. A new post, tagged #Magnolia Room, had 500 likes. Asterisk, waitress living large off a billionaire's dime. What's the real story? The comments were worse speculation about favors, affairs, ambition. In 2025, social media didn't just gossip. It judged, convicted, and sentenced. Emma approached Ethan Brooks during prep, her voice level despite the knot in her chest. "Did something happen?" Ethan didn't look up from his clipboard. "Not sure what you mean." "The team's acting different," she said, like I'm contagious. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. "You've become the center of attention, Harper. That comes at a price." Her mouth tightened. "I haven't done anything wrong." Ethan's brow lifted. "Doesn't matter what you've done. It's what people think you've done." The words stung, not because they were unfair, but because they were true. Charleston's elite dined on perception as much as they did on crab bisque. Emma spent the next hour on autopilot, pouring wine, clearing plates, dodging stares. The ex-posts gnawed at her, each notification a reminder that her life was no longer private. She slipped into the alley behind the kitchen for air, the night sticky with salt and diesel. And there he was, Nathan Pierce, leaning against the back gate, sleeves rolled up, no jacket, as if he'd been waiting for her to break. "What are you doing back here?" she asked, her voice sharper than she meant. He straightened, his gray eyes steady. "I didn't want to be a distraction inside." She crossed her arms. Too late. Nathan stepped closer, not crowding her, just close enough to feel real. "You're being talked about." "I know," she said, looking away. "I didn't mean for that." "Well, it's happening. People think I'm—" She stopped, jaw clenched. "It doesn't matter." "It does," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Do you know what it's like to be watched, judged? Like your place was never earned, and now everyone's waiting for you to prove them, right?" Nathan's expression softened, a shadow passing through his eyes. "Yes, I do." The answer caught her off guard, raw and unguarded. "I'm not your charity," she snapped. "I didn't ask for miracles." "I know," he said. "You asked for a day off." The echo of her own words made her go still. He took a breath. "Emma, if this is hurting you, I'll stop. No more fun, no more visits. You can walk away." She searched his face, looking for the catch, the agenda. There was none, just a man who seemed to carry his own weight. "Why are you giving me the choice?" she asked. "Because someone took mine once," he said, "and I never forgot how it felt." The words struck something deep, but before she could respond, he stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said, and walked into the night. Back inside, Emma's shift dragged, each tray heavier than the last. She didn't see the envelope until she cleared table 11 after closing. Smaller this time, tucked under a napkin. Inside was a single sheet, typed, * Lily Harper, Johns Hopkins Clinical Trial Enrollment. Status, pre-approved. Funded by Pierce Foundation. A handwritten note followed. "You said your sister comes first." "I agree. -N.P. *. Emma's hands trembled. She called the trial's contact number, her voice shaking as a nurse confirmed Lily's spot, fully funded. It was real. Too real. At home, Emma sat with the letter, Lily asleep in the next room. She dug through an old box of her father's things, James Harper, a software engineer who'd worked for Pierce Innovations until a scandal destroyed him. She found a faded memo, yellowed at the edges, with James's name and the word termination. Her heart sank. She'd been young when it happened, but she remembered the aftermath, her father's silence, the spreadsheets he stared at until dawn, the way their house felt like it was suffocating. She hadn't connected the dots until now. Pierce Innovations. Nathan Pierce. The next evening, Nathan was back at table 11. Emma approached, her pulse loud in her ears. "Good evening," she said, her voice cold. "Why did you really give me the fund?" Nathan looked up, his expression guarded. "I told you. You were honest." "No," she said, her voice low. "This is about my father, isn't it? James Harper." His face tightened, just for a moment. "Emma, you knew him," she cut in. "You were there when they accused him of stealing code. You let them ruin him." Nathan's silence was louder than any answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I was 26, a junior associate. My father and his partner, Richard Langston, ran the company. I was in the room when they accused James. I knew it wasn't true, but I said nothing." Emma's heart pounded, her hands trembling at her sides. "You knew who I was from the start. This wasn't kindness. It was guilt." Nathan leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "It started as guilt, yes. But when I saw your name on that receipt, I saw a chance to make something right. Not just for him, for you. You let me believe this was random," she said, her voice cracking. "You watch me fall into your plan." "It wasn't a plan," he said, standing now, his voice urgent. "It was a choice, a bad one maybe, but it was real." Emma stepped back, the letter crumpled in her apron pocket. "You should go." Nathan looked at her, really looked, and nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said, and left, the doors chime echoing in the empty dining room. Emma stood alone, the weight of the truth heavier than any tray she'd ever carried. Not broken, but not whole either. Not yet. Emma Harper woke to the low hum of Charleston's morning traffic, the scent of damp cobblestone seeping through her apartment's cracked window. The black card from the Pierce Foundation Relief Fund sat locked in a cedar box that once held her father's papers, its silver logo no longer a temptation, but a reminder of choices she hadn't yet made. Lily was on a train to Baltimore, her suitcase packed with Emma's love and a letter she'd written at 3 a.m., words too raw to say aloud. The apartment felt too quiet without Lily's soft coughs or the clink of her mug in the sink. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't running to a shift at the Magnolia Room. She'd called out, claiming Lily needed her, but the truth was heavier, She wasn't sure she could go back. The whispers at work had hardened into stares, the ex-posts into a digital jury. The latest thread, tagged hashtag Magnolia Room, had 1,200 likes. Asterisk. From waitress to kept woman? Spill the tea on Harper's sugar daddy. The comments cut deeper accusations of trading favors, screenshots of her palmetto brew with that $12 latte. In 2025, social media didn't just amplify gossip. It weaponized it, turning Emma's life into a public spectacle. She'd deleted the app from her phone, but the words lingered like salt in a wound. Charleston's old money thrived on reputation, and hers was unraveling. Emma sat at the kitchen table, a chipped mug of tea cooling in her hands. She opened her laptop, not to check X, but to search for something else: online courses. A flicker of a dream she buried under years of double shifts, nonprofit management, storytelling for community impact. The words felt foreign, like trying on someone else's life. Her father, James Harper, had been a dreamer once, a software engineer who built systems to solve problems until Pierce Innovations accused him of theft and shattered his world. Emma had been 10, too young to understand the scandal, but old enough to feel the shift: his smiles fading, his late nights staring at spreadsheets, their home holding its breath. She wanted to honor him, not just survive him. Mia wandered in, her curls tamed in a loose bun, eyeing Emma's laptop. "You're not Googling Pierce again, are you?" she asked, pouring coffee. Emma shook her head. "I'm looking at courses. Something for me." Mia's brow lifted, a grin spreading. "About time. What's the plan?" Emma hesitated. "I don't know yet. Something to help people like us. Families who get crushed by systems that don't care." Mia nodded, her gaze flicking to the cedar box. "And the billionaire? You done with him?" Emma's throat tightened. "I don't know that either." Nathan Pierce hadn't contacted her since their confrontation at the Magnolia Room, when she'd thrown his guilt back in his face. His silence was both a relief and a void, leaving her to wrestle with the truth he'd revealed. He'd been in the room when her father was accused, a silent witness to James Harper's downfall. Yet, he'd funded Lily's trial, paid their bills, given her a glimpse of rest. Was it redemption or manipulation? She couldn't decide, but she knew one thing. She needed answers, not from Nathan, but from the woman who'd shaped him. Emma arranged to meet Evelyn Pierce, Nathan's mother, at a sunlit corner of the Charleston Museum Cafe. The air smelled of espresso and old books, the kind of place where Charleston's elites sip coffee while discussing heritage trusts. Evelyn was a vision of composure: navy slacks, cream blouse, pearl earrings catching the light with every tilt of her chin. Emma, in her faded sweater and jeans, felt like an interloper, but she sat tall, her tote bag heavy with purpose. "I appreciate you meeting me," she said, her voice steady despite her thudding pulse. Evelyn's smile was polite, not warm. "I was curious what this would be about." Emma met her gaze. Clarity and control. Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly. "Dangerous things to want in this city." "Then I'm right on time," Emma replied. She pulled a folder from her tote and slid it across the table, a draft press statement. Notarized, dated, bearing Nathan's signature. It detailed Pierce Innovations' wrongful accusation against James Harper in 2005, admitting the company's error and Nathan's silence. "I made this a condition," Emma said. "If Nathan wants any part of my life, he has to start by telling the truth about my father." Evelyn scanned the document, her expression unreadable, though her fingers paused on Nathan's signature. "I see," she murmured. Emma leaned forward. "You may think I'm climbing the social ladder through your son. I'm not. I don't want your money or your name. I want justice for mine." Evelyn folded the paper precisely, her voice cool. "Most women in your position would take the luxury and leave the baggage." Emma's jaw tightened. "I don't carry baggage. I carry truth." For a moment, something flickered in Evelyn's eyes, respect, perhaps, or recognition. She sipped her coffee. "We'll see what you do with it." That afternoon, Emma walked to the Magnolia Room, not to work, but to collect her last paycheck. The foyer smelled of lemon oil and starched linen, familiar yet distant, like a house she'd outgrown. Ethan wasn't at the front, but the hostess handed her an envelope with a clipped note. Asterisk, "We appreciate your time. If you return, let me know." B asterisk. No apology, just finality. Emma stood under the shade of the magnolia trees outside, the weight of the envelope lighter than the decision she'd made. She wasn't just leaving a job. She was leaving a version of herself that had survived on autopilot. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Nathan had published a statement. The headline on a local outlet read, "Pierce Foundation heir admits past corporate wrongdoing." The article detailed James Harper's wrongful termination, citing internal memos and Nathan's own account of his silence as a young associate. On X, the story exploded, with hashtags like #Justice for Harper trending locally. Some praised Nathan's accountability. Others called it a PR stunt, dragging Emma's name into the fray. Asterisk, is the waitress behind this? Smart move or gold digging? The polarization was relentless, a snapshot of 2025's divided digital landscape, where truth was a battleground. Emma didn't read the comments. She walked to the docks, the Charleston harbor stretching wide and restless before her. The wind pushed her hair back, carrying the tang of salt and marsh. She called Lily, who answered with a sleepy, "Hey, superstar." "I saw the news," Lily said, her voice bright despite the fatigue. "Dad would have cried." Emma's throat tightened. "Yeah, me too." They talked about the trial. Lily's new roommate, a boy offering weird crackers in the waiting room. "I'm proud of you," Lily added. "Not just for Dad, for how you did it." Emma exhaled, the words anchoring her. "Thanks. That means everything." Back at the apartment, Emma opened her laptop again. The courses she'd bookmarked, nonprofit management, storytelling, felt less like a fantasy now. She enrolled in 2, her fingers trembling as she clicked submit. It wasn't just about her father anymore. It was about building something for families like theirs, crushed by systems that value profit over people. Pierce Innovations was under scrutiny again in 2025, this time for data privacy violations in their AI-driven energy systems, a scandal that echoed her father's era. Emma didn't want revenge. She wanted purpose. That night, she found a note in her mailbox, no signature, just her name in neat script. Inside, an invitation to dinner at FIG on Meeting Street, one of Charleston's most exclusive spots, for 2. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Asterisk. No demands, just a conversation. Asterisk. Emma folded it slowly, her heart caught between gratitude and suspicion. Nathan wasn't at the Magnolia Room anymore, but he was still there, in the shadows of her choices, waiting for her to decide what came next. Emma Harper stood in the quiet lobby of the old office building on East Bay Street, sunlight spilling through tall glass windows, painting the bare walls with gold. The space, a satellite office of the Pierce Foundation, had been empty for years, its polished floors and high ceilings waiting for a purpose. Emma's boots echoed as she walked, her tote bag heavy with notes and a laptop she'd bought with her last paycheck from the Magnolia Room. The air smelled faintly of cedar and possibility, a stark contrast to the lemon oil and tension of her old workplace. It was early August 2025, and Charleston hummed outside tourists, snapping photos of historic facades, locals navigating the rising costs of a city that felt less theirs every year. For Emma, this building wasn't just a space. It was a beginning. 3 months had passed since she'd walked away from the Magnolia Room, since Nathan Pierce's public statement cleared her father's name. The news had rippled through Charleston, amplified on X with hashtags like hashtag justice for Harper and hashtag Pierce accountability. Some praised Nathan's courage. Others called it a calculated move to dodge a larger scandal at Pierce Innovations, where a 2025 investigation into AI data privacy violations had unearthed old corporate sins. Emma didn't care about the optics. The statement had given her father, James Harper, back to her, not the broken man who'd faded in their living room, but the brilliant engineer who believed in building something lasting. She'd enrolled in online courses, nonprofit management, storytelling for impact, and spent nights sketching a vision. The Harper Center, a place for families like hers, caught in the cracks of systems that prioritize profit over people. Nathan had offered the building not as a gift, but as a platform. You'd run it, he'd said, standing in this same lobby weeks ago, his gray eyes steady. Shape it. It's yours if you want it. Emma had hesitated, her trust in him still fragile after his confession about her father. But she'd said yes, not to Nathan, but to herself. Now, she stood at a conference table overlooking the harbor, a thick folder open before her. Proposal: Harper Center for Community Advocacy and Patient Relief. Her words, woven into budgets, mission statements, and partnerships with local nonprofits. Her hands trembled as she traced the title. This was real. She'd started small, crowdfunding, on X to furnish the space, posting about her vision for families struggling with medical debt or job loss from AI automation, a growing crisis in 2025 as tech firms like Pierce Innovations displaced workers with algorithms. The platform, for once, worked in her favor. Donations trickled in, alongside messages from strangers who'd lost parents, siblings, dreams to similar systems. One post read, asterisk, my mom died waiting for a transplant we couldn't afford. Thank you for this. Emma had cried reading it, not out of pity, but purpose. That morning, she met with a local nonprofit aiding opioid crisis survivors, a nod to Charleston's quieter epidemic, where overdose rates had climbed alongside healthcare costs. We can share resources, the director said, shaking Emma's hand. Your center could be a hub for legal aid, too. Emma nodded, her mind racing with ideas, workshops, counseling, a website to amplify stories like her father's. She wasn't just building a center. She was building a voice. Nathan arrived in the afternoon, sleeves rolled, carrying a paper bag of sandwiches from a deli on King Street. You're gonna burn out if you skip lunch, he said, setting the bag on the table. Emma smiled, her fingers pausing on her laptop. You're starting to sound like me. He grinned, a rare lightness in his face. Personal growth. She handed him her screen, open to a draft article for the Harper Center's website. It's about Dad, she said. Not what they took from him, but what he left behind. Nathan read in silence, his eyes moving with reverence over her words. A story of James Harper's quiet brilliance, his love for coding, the way he taught Emma to see systems as puzzles to solve. This is beautiful, he said finally. Honest, strong. Emma swallowed hard. You think people will read it? They'd be lucky to. She turned away, blinking fast. You're not allowed to make me cry before sandwiches. They ate in the conference room, the harbor glinting outside, boats slicing through the water like slow brushstrokes. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was lived in, like a space they were learning to share. Emma had seen Nathan differently since the statement, less a billionaire with an agenda, more a man carrying his own ghosts. He'd told her about the 2025 Pierce Innovation scandal, how regulators were digging into their AI systems for harvesting user data without consent, a modern echo of the corporate greed that had crushed her father. I should have spoken up. Back then, he'd said. I'm trying to now. Emma set her sandwich down. Why this building? She asked, Nathan leaned back, his gaze drifting to the water. My father used it for meetings when I was a kid, before everything got complicated. It was the last place I saw him happy. She tilted her head. You've never talked about him like that. There's not much worth saying, he replied, his voice tightening. He chose power over principle. I don't want to repeat that. Emma didn't push, but she felt the weight of his words, a mirror to her own. That evening, she worked late, drafting emails to potential partners, a legal aid clinic, a food bank, a group supporting workers displaced by automation. The Harper Center wasn't just for medical debt. It was for anyone who'd been erased by systems too big to fight alone. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lily. Asterisk trials going okay. Feeling stronger. Miss you. Asterisk Emma smiled, her chest aching with pride and absence. She typed back. Asterisk miss you too. Keep logging symptoms. Call if you need me done asterisk. Lily's reply was quick. Asterisk stop worrying. Start living. Asterisk Emma closed her laptop. The room dim now, lit only by a desk lamp and the harbor's reflected glow. She thought of Nathan, his quiet support, the way he read her drafts without trying to steer them. Trust was still a work in progress, but it was growing, rooted in moments like this: sandwiches, shared silences, no demands. She'd gone to Fig for that dinner he'd invited her to, a week after leaving the Magnolia Room. It hadn't been romantic, not exactly, but it had been honest. What would you do if you didn't have to worry about anyone else? He'd asked over dessert. She'd laughed, deflecting. I don't know what that looks like. But later alone, she'd realize she was starting to. The next day, Pastor David Collins stopped by, his kind eyes scanning the bare walls. You're building something real here, he said, his voice warm. Emma showed him the plans: intake rooms for caseworkers, a kitchen for community meals, a corner for caregiver support groups. It's not perfect, she said. Good, he replied. Perfect's dishonest. This is true. He paused. And Nathan? Emma smiled softly. He's learning to show up without fixing everything. David nodded. And you're learning to let him. By week's end, the Harper Center had its first volunteers locals who'd seen Emma's ex-posts, drawn by her story. One, a former factory worker displaced by AI, offered to lead a job retraining workshop. Another, a mother who'd lost her son to an opioid overdose, wanted to start a support group. Emma listened, took notes, felt the weight of their trust. She posted a new article that night, not about her father, but about a nurse who'd worked double shifts to pay for her daughters chemo, only to lose her to medical debt. The post gained traction, shared by advocacy groups across the South. The Harper Center is for her, Emma wrote. Asterisk, for all of us who've been told to wait. Asterisk Nathan returned with coffee, his presence no longer a surprise, but a rhythm. You're making waves, he said, nodding at her laptop. Good ones? Emma looked at him, her voice steady. This isn't just about me anymore. It's bigger. He nodded, no trace of ego. I know. That's why I trust you to lead. She held his gaze, the spark of something new, not just trust, but possibility flickering between them. The Amtrak engine rolled into Charleston station, its low rumble cutting through the morning mist like a promise kept. Emma Harper stood on the platform, her hands gripping the handle of a small duffel bag, knuckles white beneath her gloves. The air was cool for August 2025. The Charleston sky fractured with soft light, as if it couldn't decide whether to bloom or stay hidden. Lily was in Baltimore, her clinical trial at Johns Hopkins showing early signs of progress, and Emma was headed to see her not as a caretaker this time, but as a sister. Nathan Pierce had sent 2 round-trip tickets, a gesture that felt less like charity and more like understanding. Emma's heart was a tangle of gratitude and caution, but for the first time in years, she wasn't running from it. The train ride was quiet, the landscape blurring past in greens and grays. Emma clutched the letter she'd written for Lily, folded tight in her pocket, alongside a printout of her latest article for the Harper Center's website. The piece, about a Charleston teacher who'd lost her job to driven education platforms, had gone viral on X, shared by advocacy groups and local journalists. The Harper Center is for the erased, she'd written, asterisk, for those who deserve to be seen. The platform, once a source of vicious gossip, had become a megaphone for her mission, with hashtag Harper Center trending regionally. In 2025, social media could break you or build you, and Emma was learning to wield it. Baltimore Station was loud, a chaos of announcements and footsteps. Lily waited outside, her cheeks flushed with a hint of color Emma hadn't seen in years. She wore a new scarf bright blue, a gift from a nurse, and her headphones hung loose around her neck. "You're late," Lily teased, pulling Emma into a hug. "Train's fault," Emma said, holding her tighter than she meant to. "You look good," Lily grinned, stepping back. "I feel halfway human. Trial's working, I think. No promises, but I'm not complaining." They spent the day in a small cafe near the trial center, sharing overpriced scones and stories. Lily talked about her roommate, a girl who loved bad puns, and a boy in the waiting room who kept offering her stale crackers. Emma listened, her heart swelling at the lightness in Lily's voice. "You're different," Lily said suddenly, stirring her tea. "Not just the center. You. Like you're not carrying the world anymore." Emma looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. "I'm trying not to." Lily's eyes softened. "He's part of that, isn't he?" "Nathan." Emma didn't answer right away, but the truth was there, quiet and undeniable. Back in Charleston, the Harper Center's opening was days away. Emma returned to find the space transformed, chairs arranged for a caregiver support group, framed, stories on the walls, a brass plaque near the entrance, asterisk in honor of James Harper, who built quietly and believed deeply. Asterisk volunteers bustled, setting up a modest kitchen for community meals. A mother sat with a caseworker, discussing housing aid, her toddler asleep in her lap. The air smelled of cedar and lavender, a deliberate choice Emma had insisted on. Details mattered. This wasn't just a center. It was a home for those who'd been forgotten. The opening was quiet by design. No red ribbons. No press conferences. Just an open door and a sign. Community welcome. Pastor David Collins arrived, his smile warm as he surveyed the space. "You've built something true," he said, patting Emma's shoulder. "Not perfect, but true." She laughed softly. "Perfect's dishonest." He nodded. "And Nathan?" Emma's gaze drifted to the harbor outside. "He's steady, learning to be here without taking over." David's eyes twinkled. "And you're learning to let him." Nathan arrived later, jacket off, sleeves rolled, carrying a box of pastries from a bakery on King Street. "Thought you'd need fuel," he said, setting it on her desk. Emma smiled, leaning against the doorframe. "You've been here 20 minutes, haven't you?" He grinned. Didn't want to interrupt. She handed him a draft of her next article, about a family displaced by Charleston's gentrification, their story woven with her father's. Nathan read it, his expression reverent. "You're giving them a voice," he said. "Not just your dad." "All of them." Emma nodded, her throat tight. "That's the point." That night, they sat on her apartment's balcony, feet propped on the railing, the city humming below. Lights flickered across rooftops, a saxophone drifting from a corner bar. Nathan turned to her. "I have something for you." He pulled out a thin envelope, 2 more Amtrak tickets to Baltimore, for when you need to see her again. Emma's heart swelled. "You're getting dangerously good at this." He smiled. "I had a good teacher." She reached into her desk drawer, pulling out the black card from the Pierce Foundation. "I kept this, she said, placing it between them. Not to use, to remind me. Power only matters if it becomes purpose. Nathan nodded, solemn. So, what now? Emma opened the cedar box, her father's old keepsake, and placed the card inside. The lid closed with a soft click. Now we lock it away, she said. We don't owe each other anything anymore. Nathan's eyes softened. No, we just choose each other. That's better. The Harper Center's first week was a quiet success. Families came for legal aid, job or training, or just a place to sit without judgment. On X, the center's story spread, shared by those it helped: a nurse, a mechanic, a mother who'd lost her son to the opioid crisis. Emma stood in the doorway, watching people move through the space she'd built. No one whispered about her past. She was just Emma Harper, a woman who'd endured, who'd chosen to rise. This story is a testament to resilience, the power of truth, and the beauty of choosing purpose over pain. Emma Harper's journey teaches us that healing isn't about erasing scars, but building something meaningful from them. Her courage to demand justice, not charity, and to create a space for others reflects the humanism of seeing and uplifting. Be overlooked. Nathan's redemption shows that guilt can spark change, but only if paired with honesty. Legacy Stories brings you tales of such transformations. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and challenge. Your thoughts matter. Comment below.